Welcome, one and all. This is the ancient journey. On today's journey, these killers were Nebraska born. But before we begin, don't forget, if you enjoy our content, hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe. Now let's get started. It's a story that has it all: forbidden romance, love, murder, the taboo, iconic images, and a damsel that appears to be in distress until the very end. It's the story of Charles Starkweather and Caril Fugate, and their story spawned renditions of the famous couple on the silver screen, radio, and print for many years to come. Charles Starkweather is a child of the Great Depression, growing up dirt poor in Lincoln, Nebraska, the son of Guy and Helen Starkweather. Guy did his best to provide for the family as a carpenter, but suffered from crippling arthritis that limited his work. The family lived with very little. Growing up, Charles would be bullied at school for being bow-legged and having a speech impediment. The constant tormenting from other classmates would harden Charles Starkweather into a monster. Charles believed from an early age that the world was out to get him, and he had little regard for the lives of his torturers or anyone else. Known as Chuck or Charlie to his friends, Starkweather enjoyed a good laugh, but as he grew up, he became a hard man, and his laughter often came at the expense of others. Starkweather loved a good fight and had no problem sizing up the largest opponent he could find. With reddish hair and piercing green eyes, Starkweather would be inspired by the looks and the style of movie star James Dean in the 1955 movie Rebel Without a Cause. Charles would try to dress and act like Dean's character in the film: cool, uncaring, a criminal with a sly grin, and that just so perfectly styled haircut. As Charles grew up, he grew out of school, leaving high school at the age of 16, and began working loading newspapers onto the backs of trucks. But soon Starkweather would be introduced to a girl, the 13-year-old Caril Fugate. And finally, after a life filled with struggle, Starkweather had finally found something good. It's possible that Charles took that newspaper job to be closer to Caril, but whatever the case, Charles and Caril were quickly and crazily in love with each other. Charles would try to teach Caril how to drive, with some disastrous results. Caril would end up crashing the Starkweather family car, which would cause Guy Starkweather to throw Charles out of the house. In response, Charles would end up getting a room for rent and taking a job as a trash collector, trying to earn some more money. But Charles still had struggles earning his way, and still believed that the world was solidly and steadfastly against him. He would still visit Caril daily after school, something that apparently didn't sit very well with her family, which is understandable, as this now adult high school dropout was practically moving in with their still teenage daughter. But with life so hard, and seeming to try to be keeping him and Caril apart, Charles believed that his situation would never change unless he did something about it. And he adopted a philosophy to justify his plans. Dead people are all on the same level. Charles is fired from his garage truck job. He is then kicked out of his rented room due to not paying rent. The perfect storm has been set in motion. It's too late now to turn back. All that Charles has left is Caril. Charles is 19 years old, and on the night of November 30th, 1957, Charles attempts to get store credit to purchase a stuffed animal at a local gas station. Robert Colvert, the attendant on duty, refuses to give Charles credit and Charles returns several times through the night to try to convince him to allow him to have store credit and make the purchase. Robert continues to refuse, and the last time that Charles returns, it's not to ask for credit, it's with a shotgun. He robs Colvert of all the money in the cash register and then drives him out to a remote area with the intention of killing him. The two struggle over the shotgun, but Colvert is eventually overcome, and Starkweather fires several shots, killing him. The fuse has now been lit. Charles's thirst for blood must be satiated, and he cannot lose Caril in the process. On January 21st, 1958, Starkweather goes to Caril's front door. Caril's family all tell Charles that he needs to stay away. Their refusal to allow Charles in is all the justification that he needs. He enters the home, fatally shooting Caril's mother and stepfather, Velda and Marion Bartlett. He also savagely beats their 2-year-old daughter, Betty Jean, to death. Caril's version of events begin to differ here from Starkweather's. Caril would claim that Charles told her to cooperate with him, or her family would be harmed. Charles claimed that Caril was there with him the entire time and knew that her family was dead, and that the two would even sit and have a nice lunch just after the murders. But whatever the case, Caril now becomes part of Charles's murder spree, and the two will be linked together forever. With the bodies hidden behind the house, Charles and Caril would remain in the home for a few days. Caril's grandmother would come calling, wondering why she had not seen or heard from the family. Caril would become Charles's accomplice, telling her grandmother that the house was having a bout of the flu and to stay away. She even places a note on the front door, "Stay away. Everybody is sick with the flu, Miss Bartlett." Eventually, the police make their way into the home at the insistence of Caril's grandmother. The body of Marion is in the chicken house outside. Velda and baby Betty Jean are found in another building. But Charles and Caril are long gone. Just hours before the police arrive, Charles and Caril are at a gas station on Highway 77, buying fuel, more shotgun shells, and other ammunition. Charles knows the perfect place to hide out from the law. It's a farmhouse owned by family friend August Meyer, who used to allow the Starkweathers to hunt on his land. Charles and Caril make their way to August Meyer's house, where he is killed by a shotgun blast. They stuff August's body into an outbuilding on his property. On the run once again, fate would now place its cold hand on two more victims, Charles and Caril. On the road towards the farmhouse, their car would become stuck, and soon after, a helpful pair of Samaritans would pull up and try to assist. 17-year-old Robert Jensen and his 16-year-old date, Caril King, would drive up and offer to assist. Charles claims that he shot Robert, but Caril Fugate shoots Caril King. Caril claimed that she stayed in the car the entire time and Charles did all the killing. But in either case, Robert and Caril become the next two victims on the warpath. And the killings have now changed. No warning is given. People who come across the path of Charles and Caril are seemingly killed in an instant without warning. Starkweather has an idea come to him while they are on the run. As a trash collector, he became very familiar with neighborhoods in Lincoln, Nebraska, especially the wealthy ones. And some of the wealthier homes in Lincoln would be just the place to fill his pockets and take out more of his aggression. Charles and Caril are able to push their way into the home of C. Lauer Ward. killing the maid of the home, Lillian Finkel, and the family dog in the process. As these two natural-born killers lie in wait, they hear Clara Ward arrive home first. Starkweather claims that Caril stabbed Clara to death, but Caril claims that Starkweather was the one who did the stabbing. But soon after, Seelauer Ward arrives home and is shot dead by Charles Starkweather. The two murderers, now reeling with excitement, begin to ransack the house and fill up the back of Seelauer Ward's 1956 Packard with valuables from the house. They put the pedal of the big car to the floor and attempt to flee the state of Nebraska. What they leave behind is a county in a rage. Seelauer Ward is a wealthy industrialist, and the murder of the Ward family and their maid causes a house-to-house search by law enforcement. The National Guard is soon mobilized by Nebraska Governor Victor Anderson when the local police come up empty. The Ward's stolen Packard has been identified as missing, and the killers realize they need a new ride. Just outside of Douglas, Wyoming, they slow down as they approach a Buick parked alongside of the road. Inside that Buick, traveling salesman Merle Collison is sound asleep, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Collison is instantly killed by Starkweather's shotgun blast. Again, the murder takes place almost the second they come across their victim. But Starkweather would claim that Caril Fugate is the one behind the trigger, calling her the most happy trigger person he had ever met. Caril denies this killing as well. But as they go to drive off in the Buick, Merle's car proves to be a problem for them. This Buick is equipped with a parking brake, something that Starkweather had not seen before, and without releasing it, the car only bucks and stalls as they try to drive off. As this is the 1950s, again, there's no shortage of helpful Samaritans, and one pulls over as he sees the Buick floundering. Joe Sprinkle, a geologist, pulls over to offer help. For once, Starkweather hesitates just a moment, and the two begin to struggle over his rifle. And at that very moment, Sheriff's Deputy William Romer arrives on the scene. Caril Fugate runs towards him. She screams, "It's Starkweather! He's going to kill me!" Starkweather drives off in the stolen Packard and is chased by the three police officers at speeds exceeding 100 miles an hour. Shots are fired at the Packard by Sheriff Earl Heflin. And finally, Charles Starkweather pulls over and surrenders, bloodied and injured by the broken glass from the car's rear window. On January 29, 1958, Charles Starkweather is taken into custody. Charles and Caril are locked up in a Douglas, Wyoming jail, and neither of the two show any real remorse for their actions. Caril does scream for her mother so long that she is eventually given a sedative, but Starkweather hams it up for the cameras, smiling at the media that he has gathered. He confesses to the murder of Robert Culver at the Lincoln gas station some 2 months before. And these two lovers will begin to complicate the story. Starkweather at first tells police that Caril had been his captive the entire time. But soon after, Caril betrays him, turning against him. And Charles then asserts that Caril was a willing participant in the murder spree. In May of 1958, Charles Starkweather is found guilty of murder, and in October of that same year, Caril Fugate's trial begins. She claims she was a hostage of Starkweather the entire time. But Starkweather is brought to the court to testify against her. He says that she was a willing participant and that she could have escaped at any time, even adding that he left her alone with loaded firearms several times. But Caril gleefully joined in the killings. On November 21st, a jury sentences Caril to life in prison for her part in the killing spree. Charles Starkweather is sent to the electric chair on June 25, 1959. Caril completes her high school education while in prison, and in 1973, her sentence is reduced, making her eligible for parole. In 1976, she is released, and in 1981, she is taken off parole. In 2020, Caril is denied a pardon for her role in the slayings. But even as Charles is long dead and Caril is trying to erase her past, their story of these two intertwined lovers continues to inspire and fascinate the world. The killings will inspire films such as The Sadist, Badlands, California, and Natural Born Killers. Novelist Stephen King says he is strongly influenced by reading about the murders and even keeps a scrapbook about them. There's a line in Billy Joel's 1989 song, We Didn't Start the Fire, that includes the words Starkweather, homicide. Bruce Springsteen writes the song Nebraska in 1982 about the murders, where he writes, from the town of Lincoln, Nebraska, with a sawed-off 410 in my lap, through the Badlands of Wyoming, I killed everything in my path. In the end, Charles and Caril's story becomes infamous. They were a better 1950s version of Bonnie and Clyde. Charismatic, photogenic, insane, and most of all, lethal. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sharing the journey.